Welcome to the Figure Feedback Podcast. This is episode 7, and this episode is going to be all about the Flashforge Adventurer 5M. That's my new toy, my new FDM 3D printer, and I've been having a blast with this thing. And the first video that I made about it, just sort of going over what my entire experience has been like and talking about some pros and cons. I'm really happy to see that that video has gained some traction, and around 4,000 to 5,000 folks have viewed it. And I'm really happy to see that more people are sort of just getting turned on to this printer and are considering picking it up for themselves because it is a really good value for the money. We're talking $300 currently right now, running until nearly the end of February if they don't extend that sale. And for what you're getting, a high-speed Core XY 3D printer that has a 4.3-inch touchscreen, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, automatic leveling, automatic Z offset, just all that really good modern stuff. It is a killer price for what you are getting. And I've been trying to make some more videos about this printer, just sort of showing some of the more basic functionalities in case you're just sort of getting started and you want to know how do you do things such as do a filament swap. Or if you want to know how do you connect a USB camera, how do you view the footage from that USB camera, and just sort of like what the menu system is and how you can get rid of that annoying little chirpy sound that it makes whenever you turn it on that makes it sound like a toy, just all that good stuff. So I'm going to be putting out more videos about this printer in the future. But for now, in this podcast episode, I want to give some updates, things that I've learned since I recorded that video, and then also give some corrections to things that I said in that video. And I think I'm going to start off with some corrections. Now, the first correction, I actually put it as a pinned comment. I was talking about the enclosure for the printer, that you can print several different pieces to start off the enclosure while we wait for Flashforge to provide the kit that has the acrylic panels that we can use to, complete the build. I said that those guard pieces that are on the front of the frame took around 20 to 30 minutes to print each, but that's not accurate. I misspoke when I said that. They actually took about 52 minutes to print, and I printed them vertically. So it wasn't between 20 and 30, it was 52 minutes, and they still came out looking pretty good. I think 52 minutes is still a good time to print out each of those pieces. So that is the first correction. My apologies for that. Now, the second thing that I want to say is sort of like it's not necessarily a full correction, it's really more of an expansion. So I was talking about the fact that you have a couple of different ways that you can print. You can use a regular USB stick, or if you want, you can use the Wi-Fi functionality to send the file over the internet using the slicer, which is Flashprint, and how that is currently the only way that you can transfer your files over the Wi-Fi network. And while that's technically true, it's also not as cut and dry. Someone left a comment that said that you can actually use OrcaSlicer, which is another third-party slicing software that even Flashforge recommends that you install and use for their printers. They say that you can use that OrcaSlicer to also move files over the network to the printer. But I said that I would look into it, and I did. And what I found out was it appears that while it's technically possible for you to do that, the build is not it's not an official, stable dev build of OrcaSlicer. It's something that someone from the community put together. And actually, I'm going to put up on the screen now the forum post from GitHub so we can kind of just look at it together. And then you can see here, this person here says, "Dear Flashforge, I made an implementation of the serial TCP connection using some reverse engineering using Wireshark. Sorry, but I was impatient this time. It is working on my Adventurer 5M Pro. However, some error handling might be added, e.g. the printer is busy, etc. I don't know all the available spec commands that might be included. C++ is not my primary language, so the code might not be the cleanest. Please revise and adapt my code and make it available to the community as we are eagerly awaiting for this to happen. And this was on January 9th of this year. And the title is Adding Functionality to Flashforge Adventurer 5M Wi-Fi Serial Connection. So while they were able to get it up and working using their advanced knowledge, I have no idea what any of that stuff means. The bottom line is it's not an official OrcaSlicer stable release build. And for me personally, I would rather wait for something like that as opposed to just downloading, installing, and running software that just a member of the community happened to put together. I'm not saying that there's anything nefarious going on, but just for my own peace of mind, it's something that I personally wouldn't do. But if you want to do it, go ahead. You know, we're adults, you paid for your printer, you do whatever you want with it. But if nothing else, this proves that it does work. And hopefully we can get this in a stable build very soon so that we'll be able to print over Wi-Fi using OrcaSlicer, and hopefully also have an ability to tell the slicer to also level the bed before the print. So I don't have to keep going back to the printer to manually tell it to level. All right, so that was that sort of half correction. Another thing that I wanted to address, since we're kind of like on the topic of slicers, is that in the con section of that video near the end, I was mentioning how at times when I would try to do consecutive prints that I tried to level the bed with. So let's say that I finished one print and then I wanted to start a new print, and I always want to level the bed before each print. But the weird thing is, when the printer was just sort of getting its act together and going to its different positions, it would try to move further than it was able, and it would cause a rattling sound, like a da 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 da, you know, like it's gone too far to the side, or the bed platform has gone too far and it doesn't know where it is. And then the printer will give an error that says something like, out of range, please go home. And the way to fix it was to turn the printer off, turn it back on, and then start the print and try to level it again that way. And that made the problem go away. I thought that it was probably with firmware, but now I don't think it's firmware. I am fairly certain at this point that it has to do with the Flashprint slicer and whatever G code that they're using whenever you slice a print. I think that's the problem. Because when I use OrcaSlicer, one thing that I noticed and that I really love with what OrcaSlicer does is when the print is finished, the build platform goes back to home. So if you're printing something and when it's done, the platform is pretty high in the sky, well, high in the air. In Flashprint, it just stays there. But in OrcaSlicer, it goes all the way down, which is what I prefer. And kind of resetting itself like that, it eliminates the printer not knowing where it is when you go to start another print. So ever since I started using OrcaSlicer, I can now do consecutive prints while leveling the bed without hearing that annoying and really concerning da 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 rattling sound, because OrcaSlicer seems to have its act together when it comes to, you know, handling that motion. So the Flashforge slicer definitely needs to be upgraded, at least to add the automatic ability for the print bed to go right back to home when you're done with the print and not just stay where it is, because I think that that may be the issue. Another thing that I want to mention is when it comes to filament swaps, I did make a video showing how you can do a filament swap on this printer in case you were curious, you're thinking about picking it up and you kind of want to know how all the different functions and stuff works. So I did put out a video about that. But I also put out an unlisted video that's a brief 1 minute and 45 seconds that goes along with that. Because in the filament swap video, I just showed the PLA function that will heat up the nozzle or the hot end to 220 degrees Celsius. But the question was posed, what if you are trying to load in something like ABS that needs a higher temperature? And you can select a preloaded ABS option from that exact same menu, and it will increase the hot ends temperature to 260 degrees Celsius so that you can more reliably extrude that ABS. So that is an option. They also give you the ability to customize the temperature. So the max that you can get for that default hot end, that default nozzle, it's 280 degrees. So you can get it up to that point to heat up, or you can just use one of the default settings. It's completely up to you. So if you want to check out that brief 1 minute and 45-second video to just sort of show what that looks like, there's going to be a link in the description so that you can check that out as well. And one of the last things I want to mention is how a member of the Reddit community has created these snap fit enclosure pieces that you can use to customize the 5M. So, you know, like how Flashforge has files that you can use to print out the enclosure, where they sort of done the same thing, except instead of needing tools, a screwdriver and some screws in order to secure it into place, they've developed some snap fit options instead. So I've actually tried a few of them. I made a snap fit cover for the screen. It does not require you to take anything off. It just goes right over the screen, and it also leaves the USB port open, so you won't have any problems using the USB port. And then I also printed out a little attachment for the bed. So you know, on the bed they have that gray piece that you can grab onto. So it just made another piece where you can just put right over that to just sort of customize with the color that you want to use to just sort of make everything kind of pop. And that goes along with the frame pieces that they also designed that I actually want to show you here. So check this out. So this is the original, this is one of the original guards that Flashforge provided files to print for, and this goes on the left side of the printer. So this is what that looks like, and then this one right here is what the person who created the snap fit files, this is what they came up with. Now, first of all, let me say, don't print this horizontally, print it vertically, because I tried to print it horizontally to see what would happen, and it looked nice for the most part, but as you can probably see here, it's got some pretty gnarly seam lines or whatever. Like right here, it's just not smooth. It wasn't supposed to be printed that way. It's supposed to be printed like this. But the point that I want to make here is this, as you can see, has no holes on it. So they have like these little nubs on the inside of them. Like here's like a little nub right here on it, and there's these holes on the side of on the frame for the Flashforge, and you're supposed to be able to just pop those in and snap it into place. And yeah, that's an option for you. But the only thing here is that I've noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you go to use these particular frame pieces, you don't have the option to mount whenever it's available the acrylic door, because on this piece you see that these little two holes right here are supposed to be for a bracket that you can print out and attach with screws, and that's what the door is going to attach to. But from the files that I've seen, there's no such thing on these, so I'm not sure how you would be able to attach the bracket to it and then be able to attach the door to it. But it is something that I was trying out, and I do like the snap fit design. So hopefully that person can create some more mods for the Flashforge Adventurer 5M printers, because it's great to be able to see that kind of support. Someone actually taking the time to design things and put it out for the community. That's really awesome. So hopefully we can see some more in the future. Okay, so I want to talk about the slicers again for a moment, and what's the differences between Flashprint and OrcaSlicer. Why should you use OrcaSlicer instead of Flashprint? You know, all that stuff. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but you know, the thing is, Flashprint at first glance, it's a lot easier to just wrap your head around. The interface is a lot more user friendly. It's a lot more beginner friendly. They don't have a whole bunch of numbers and drop boxes and menus just staring at you in the face like OrcaSlicer does. So Flashprint is a really good way to just ease people into the whole slicing thing without throwing out too many options all at once. I mean, they have more advanced menu options. You dig a little bit deeper in order to see them, but just kind of right up front, it's not something that you would see like on the main display. But one of the things that I really like about OrcaSlicer, even though it's intimidating looking at it for the first time, I've already been able to use a really useful feature that it has, and it's the measuring feature. Something that I didn't think that I would really use, but it's come in handy. It really has. So in OrcaSlicer, you're able to put a model into it, and you'll be able to measure the distance between one point to another point simply by highlighting it and clicking on it, and you'll be able to see like how many millimeters across something is or how tall something is. So if you are trying to figure out how big you need to make something, or if you need to expand the model, or if you need to make it smaller, OrcaSlicer lets you do that, and I've actually put that to the test with a couple of things that I've printed so far. So let me grab the first one. So I showed this print of this Warhammer 40K bolt pistol in a video that I did about Elegoo's Rapid PETG filament, which has just been fantastic. And this is really cool. I love this little thing. But I've got right here this Inquisition emblem, and this was a separate print that I've actually glued to the gun. And when I came across this, I was like, man, it would look kind of cool if I could just put that on the gun. So it was like, hey, this is now an Inquisitor's bolt pistol. But I didn't know how big that was going to be in comparison to this gun. And that's where the measuring feature came in handy. So having this model at 75% scale in the slicer, I just looked at whatever was the flattest area that had the most space, and I was able to measure it in the slicer, like how far across is this and how tall this is. And I got that measurement. Then I brought in the separate file for this Inquisitor emblem, and I just shrunk it to 50%, and then I measured that to see like how much space am I going to have? Do I have enough space? Do I need to make it smaller, or could I make it a little bit bigger? And once I got that down, it only took, like a minute or two, and I was able to get what I think is a pretty perfect fit, and I glued it on, and it looks really, really cool. So I was really just kind of amazed at a feature that I didn't think I would really use in OrcaSlicer, and it turned out to be really, really helpful and handy, and I ended up using it a second time. So one of the other things that I printed on here was this grid piece for, maybe you've heard of it. It's a grid infinity system. And people use the whole grid infinity thing for a lot of different reasons. But what I want to use it for is organizing the kitchen drawer. We throw so much crap in there. And we already have something that has, space for your forks and your spoons and your butter knives and stuff like that. But there's also a lot of other random things like can openers, awkward kind of spoons, and just random bits and pieces that don't fit into those categories. And they've got these customizable kitchen utensil holders and end caps and all that stuff, but it starts with this grid platform here that you can now put those other pieces on top of. So I used the measuring feature in OrcaSlicer. And well, the first thing I did was I got some measuring tape, and I just measured the space that was inside of my kitchen drawer. How tall is it? How far across is it? And then I got this, put this into OrcaSlicer, and I did the measurement. And doing that, I was able to determine that I could print 2 of these and have one of these on top, and I'll be able to have 2 of these stacked on top of each other and still have enough space left over. And then I can just take this and just sort of cut off this part. So instead it would just be like a 2 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I can do that and put them side by side in my kitchen drawer. And because of the measuring feature in OrcaSlicer, I was able to do that. So it helps to fit things a lot more accurately. And yeah, there's two examples back to back, like one day after another, I was able to use that. And that's just one of the really useful features in that slicer that I like. And I know there's a ton more things that you can do, like painting on supports. That is a very easy thing as well. I used paint on supports to support a Pikachu tail in a print that I did yesterday, and it worked out great with tree support. So if you're looking for a slicer to use, Flashprint, it gets the job done. I've used it a bunch. But if you want some a little bit more advanced functionality and some more useful features and just overall some code that's just seems to be better written than Flashprint, then definitely check out OrcaSlicer. And like I said, as of right now, you can't officially print over Wi-Fi, and you can't look at your camera because of that. If you do have a camera connected to your printer, you're still going to need Flashprint for that. But you can still look at the camera through Flashprint. You don't have to slice with it if you don't want to. You can just slice it in OrcaSlicer, get your print started on your printer, and then you can still connect. You can still open up Flashprint and connect to your Wi-Fi, and then look at your camera that way. So you may have to use both of those slicers for the time being to get as much functionality as you want out of it. But I've been pleasantly surprised with what OrcaSlicer has been able to do for me so far. I've also been taking some pictures of some of the things that I printed and putting them up either on the community page here on YouTube or on the Figure Feedback Instagram page. So if you're on Instagram, go ahead and give Figure Feedback a follow. It is instagram.com/figure feedback, and that's where you can see some more up close photos of the prints and whatnot. And one of the other things that I printed, a couple more things that I printed on the printer so far, it's been pretty useful, is a magnet that I can put on my dishwasher, where one side has dirty on it, and then you flip it over and the other side says clean. And I printed it with two different types of filament, and it was snap fit. I just kind of pushed them all in there, and I had a couple of magnets that I glued to the back, and that's been useful. And then also had some hair bands for my kids, for my girls. They broke a couple of theirs. So I found some files for some hair bands, and I printed them out 25 minutes later, and it fits their heads. So man, it's just great with PETG filament. This rapid PETG filament has just been great. And I think it's probably going to be my default filament that I use from this point, because if I can have the strength and the resiliency of PETG printed as quickly as PLA, then I'm like, well, why would I even use PLA unless it's a color that I can't get in rapid PETG filament? So if it's just a primary color, your red, your blues, your yellows, your greens, stuff like that, then why not? I think I'm just going to be doing the PETG. Just being able to do stuff like that at a really good speed and come out with some very nice quality is just one of the great reasons to have a fast 3D printer. So, for $300, this printer is just really great value, and I hope that it withstands the test of time and, everything just sort of holds up. Of course, I'm not expecting it to just be mechanically perfect for years and years and years and nothing ever goes wrong. Things can always go wrong, and there's always going to be the chance of some troubleshooting at some point. But, the point is not to just completely avoid any kind of thing that can go wrong, because you can't do that. Not with printers, not with cars, not with TVs, not with anything. Something can always go wrong. But the whole point is to having some good reliability so that it will more than likely not happen. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky. But I think with printers like this, with this sort of take it out of the box, set it up in 10 minutes and get going, and you don't have to fuss with all these different settings and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. I mean, it's just perfect for something like that. And you can always go into it later and adjust things accordingly as you get more acclimated and as you get more curious. There's always room to do that. But a there's a big market of people who want 3D printers that are just simple. I just want it to work. Even folks who know what they're doing, they know about CNC machines, they know how to design things, they know how these things work. But it's just so refreshing to not have to do much to it because you buy 3D printers to print things. I think moving forward, printers like this is definitely what the public at large are going to want. Now, there's always going to be a market for people who want to just buy the printers that are completely unassembled and spend 2, 3, 4 hours putting it together and learning everything that there is to know about it and just really getting your hands dirty. I mean, there's always going to be a place for that. But, I think for companies that want to grab as much market share as possible, you've got to cast that net long and wide. And keeping it simple is going to attract the majority of people because this type of thing is intimidating. People see something like a 3D printer and they feel like, well, I'll never figure out how something like that works. What? But if you can show how simple it is, and these companies make it a lot more easier to get it up and running and to get started, then that means more money for them. And the more money for them, they're going to be happy. And then the customers are going to be happy. So you keep going down that trend. And that's why we hear so much more about 3D printers now compared to what we were hearing way back when taking out the box, plug and play, plug, play, and print was not really a thing, So there's definitely a big market for these types of things. And especially at this type of price, it is just killer price for $299. So yeah, if you are on the fence, think about it for a little bit longer, until that sale starts to come to an end and make your decision there. Now, I am going to leave links to where you can find this on Amazon because they sell it for the same price, $299. And if you want to get it directly from Flashforge, you can do that as well. Now, I will tell you that when I purchased this printer, I did buy it direct from Flashforge at first, but I got cold feet because I thought that because I didn't order from Flashforge USA and I just ordered from Flashforge, I thought that maybe it would be shipped from China. And maybe it would take like 3 weeks to reach me. So I panicked and I needed to cancel it. I tried to cancel it a day after I bought it, and then I just bought it on Amazon instead. But they couldn't cancel it immediately because it had already shipped, and it didn't ship from China. It shipped from one of their United States warehouses. And I think that I bought it maybe like on a Thursday, and it was going to be delivered that following Tuesday. So that's a pretty decent time, I think. And what I ended up having to do was just refuse the delivery because that way UPS would send it back to the sender and I would not have to pay for the return shipping. So I kept the Amazon one and I sent the one from Flashforge back to Flashforge via UPS by refusing that delivery. But I will say that their communication with me was pretty expedient, and even though they're going through I think like the Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year, was going on when I bought it, or shortly after I bought it, it started going on. And even with that, I was still able to get some response from my inquiries, and I really do appreciate that. I was a little bit worried what it was going to be like, but it was nice. It was pretty decent. But yeah, you guys, that's going to do it for this episode of the Figure Feedback Podcast. Just wanted to fill you in on some of what's going on with this printer and things that I've learned since making that first video. And I hope I was able to open up your eyes to some of the things that maybe you are thinking about doing with this printer. And if you got any questions about it, you can leave them in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer them. But in the meantime, I'm going to be coming up with some more ideas of some other videos that I can make with this printer. And then once that happens, you will see them all here. So also be sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you can see those videos when they launch. Thank you all so much for watching. Till next time, take care of yourselves. I'll speak to you soon.